Good evening, and welcome to Mulberry School for Girls' first annual education lecture.
We would like to thank you all for joining us this evening. We are particularly grateful to the staff and students of Ansford Academy who have travelled all the way from Somerset to be here. Before we begin, we must draw your attention to a few house rules.
We are not expecting a fire drill tonight. If you hear the fire alarm, please evacuate the building through the nearest fire exit. The assembly point for visitors is on the corner of John Adams Street and Robert Street, which is to the right-hand side of the Adelphi building.
At Mulberry, we believe strongly that education happens not just inside the classroom, but beyond it.
We see a vital connection between education and industry. We believe that every sector of industry, from arts to engineering, science to finance, is closely connected to the work of schools.
Industry has the power to affect education by mentoring students so that they can access and thrive in a wide range of careers.
And schools have the power to affect industry because it is in schools that tomorrow's industry leaders are currently being nurtured. A new generation of directors and CEOs whose education will inspire and empower them to bring fresh insight and innovative thinking to the table when they embark on their own careers.
For this reason, we wish to foreground and celebrate the role of industry in education and for education in industry.
We also believe passionately in the lifelong love of learning. This is one of the central principles of our school's ethos.
We believe that education is a joy and a privilege in its own right, and we wanted to bring together representatives of our students, staff, and governors and friends to celebrate all that education can do.
This is where the idea of the annual education lecture was born. We plan to hold an annual event for our valued friends and partners, and an event to foreground education, to explore its relationship with the wider world, and above all, to celebrate the joy of learning.
It is our pleasure to introduce you to tonight's speaker. The inaugural education lecture will be led by Jude Kelly, CBE. Jude is Artistic Director of the Southbank Centre and the founder of the Women of the World Festival, known as WOW, which began in 2010.
WOW is now a significant global brand. The festival is an annual celebration of the lives and achievements of women and girls all over the world, bringing together artists, speakers, and performers from a huge range of disciplines. The festival explores women's lives, their successes, and the obstacles against which they continue to struggle.
Jude will argue that creativity, culture, and the arts play a central role in education and must be fought for and protected.
Please join us in welcoming Jude Kelly to the stage.
Thank you so much. And as ever, I always feel spectacularly blessed when I'm introduced by Mulberry girls, because they do it with such finesse, and I always sound better than I really could. And thank you for giving me the honour of giving this inaugural lecture. I think it's a great idea that you're doing it. I think it's great that you take over this space, Royal Society for the Arts, which doesn't have much representation of either thee or me, but will do in the future. I'm really happy to do it because it gives me a chance to reflect with you what has meant such a lot to me in my life, creativity, the arts, and I'm relying on you as future leaders to think about how you will take not my ideas forward, but a synthesis of any ideas, however random, that you pick up tonight that you think might be useful, and your ideas, and take them forward, and I know you will. Let me tell you what I'm going to talk about. I'm going to talk about myself. People are always talking about themselves, really, because there's no such thing as objectivity in a human. A human always speaks of what they believe and know, based on what they've chosen to believe and know, based on their own values. But I'm going to talk about myself and my beliefs and where those beliefs came from and what I've done with them. I'm going to talk about society and how societies project themselves through their education frameworks and through all their institutions, which having just come back from China yesterday is an interesting thing. I'm going to talk about ideas that we have currently around diversity, around inclusion, such complicated words, and about cultural knowledge generally, global cultural knowledge. And throughout all those themes, my central argument is really that the arts, and I have a broad definition of that, the arts and creativity, i.e. playing with ideas and having the courage to play with ideas and see ideas in different frameworks. The arts are critical to inductive human beings into human conversations that include a recognition of each person's inner life. And I will end with looking at a phrase that somebody said to me the other day, which was, I know we're educating a lot of leaders, but are we educating enough followers? And I find that such an objectionable idea, that we need to be training more followers. But it seems to me something that we should talk about towards the end. So let's talk about me. Here I am. Out behind the lectern. You'll find, by the way, women, all lecterns are normally too high. Especially if you're 5'2", which I am, and because they've always been designed usually by a man. So we'll just move that back because you can't see well enough. So, and the reason I'm coming out and just letting you have a look at me is because they do say that only 7% of your information from another human comes from what they say, and the rest of it comes from body language and intuition and all the rest of it. So no matter what I'm saying to you, you're also looking at me and going, what's she really like? What do you think of her hair? And is she married? Has she got children? There's all sorts of stuff you're trying to work out about me. I'll just tell you most of it so that you put you out of your misery. Things that I would say about myself. I'm one of 4 daughters. I was brought up in Liverpool. My father was one of 10 children. My mother comes from a 3rd generation German Protestant family, and my father comes from a 2nd generation Irish Catholic family. And in Liverpool, we have 2 cathedrals in order you can worship either one, the Catholic or the Protestant one, which meant that when I was growing up as a little girl in Liverpool, a mixed marriage, which is what it was considered to be quite a kind of unusual thing to do. We had to support both football teams, and my father decided we wouldn't worship at either a Catholic or Protestant church. We would go to Presbyterian, since that was, generally speaking, quite bland, and nobody was going to fight about it. Now, those are very important ingredients to me. I mean, I'm proud of the fact that my father, youngest of 10, travelled through his life and really got a scholarship when he was 11 to go to a grammar school. And you will understand intimately the impact that can have on a child to go from a situation where an expectation of the community they would go into manual labour, whatever, blue-collar working, and actually what happens when a child is told not only that they're clever, but that there's somebody who's going to back them to be clever. I mean, as it happens, he went into the war when he was 17, he signed up for the Second World War, he was in Bomber Command, and when he came out, he joined the civil service. Now this is another important thing, because he already felt as if he wanted to work out how to contribute to society, and to do that by being a public servant, which is what he was all his life. He's still alive, he's 93, wonderful man. So my family were one of those sorts of families where, having got education, I was able to see straight away that of my father's 9 siblings, only Jimmy and John, 2 brothers, had children who were able to access full secondary education till 18 and then go to university. The impact that has made on our lives compared to our cousins is frighteningly different. Frighteningly different. In terms of health, money, aspiration, possibility, etc. So it's made me completely understand that whoever fought for anybody to have the privilege of education, that fight is still on, really, to give everybody's potential an outing. But we know that societies tend to try to limit the number of people who can rise to the top, because there is a fear that if too many rise to the top, who will be at the bottom doing all the stuff that people need to do. And so when I was a little girl, I was actually told, not as many people should be educated as could be, because who will empty the bins? That was a phrase, who will empty the bins? Or who will be on Mulberry's checkout? So you could see straight away that there was an idea that to encourage aspiration for everyone would, in theory, be a problem for society. I come from a family who encouraged us to be a lawyer or a doctor or an accountant, and everybody's nodding. Because one way of demonstrating that you had stated, oh, you could be a doctor, was that you could say, well, your education was going into a profession that had legitimacy, it had financial security, and this was in a way your family could demonstrate that they had given you the best possible start, and there you were. None of us are accountants or doctors or lawyers or business people, I'm afraid. When I was 7, because I had flat feet, which I still have got, the doctor told my mum to send me to ballet classes. And from the minute I heard music, and it was associated with movement, I completely understood for the first time who I was. The relationship for me between music and movement, I can still remember the moment. It transported me into realising that I had an inner life. Do you know what I mean by an inner life? I had a conversation inside me. And I mean, you have these conversations when you're playing with your toys and so on. But when you have it as a personal experience as a child, and you realise that these feelings are let out, and also not just let out chaotically, but that you've got a way of putting these feelings into expression, that's the most amazing thing that can happen to you. And whether or not you do or do not want to go on to be an artist professionally, this ability for your inner life to have a place where you can put it, through music, through dance, through art, through sculpture, through poetry, through tapestry, through all sorts of things, it's a revelation that you exist, and that you don't exist just as a part of somebody else's scheme, but in a sense you've got your own wild possibilities. Which is why people are frightened of art. Because when a child realises they have an inner life, and that nobody knows what it is, you instantly got the opportunity to push that inner life in as many directions as possible, and other people can't control you. You can start self-defining. I was able to carry on developing this inner life because I had opportunities, not just at school, but in Liverpool generally, to see ballet, to go to the theatre, to go around art galleries. And I don't come from a family of cultural education for people, as I explained to you. I'm from a very modest family. But Liverpool was a place, even though it wasn't the capital city, that where the Beatles have been there, Merseyside poets have been there. There was a lot of culture. And it was perceived to be something that was people's right. They were entitled to enjoy it. And so we did. And it wasn't until much, much later, when I was 18, I think, and I went to university to study drama, that I realised that actually that's not what culture is mainly like for people. That the arts are often something that aren't available to everyone. Most people don't feel entitled to it. Most people can't afford it. And the arts conspire sometimes to say to people, it's only yours if you sort of can demonstrate that you're intelligent enough, sensitive enough, aesthetic enough to appreciate us. So the arts has got its own problems of inclusion. But in Liverpool at that point, I didn't know that. I just felt that I had now got this ability to explore myself. But of course, the other thing that the arts did for me was it suddenly made me able to explore other people. And this is a critical thing, isn't it? It gave me the ability to act out stories and say, well, I'm not this person, but if I pretend to be this person, how do I feel? And exploring it through drama, or reading it in literature, it produces a different understanding. It's not a cold, formal, analytical understanding. It's empathetic, it's compassionate, it's a mysterious relationship with people who are you. And this idea that the arts can help you understand the whole world and not just your world, those two things together, I think, are what make art so powerful and so necessary as a way of understanding who we are and who the world is. Because I can't think of anything other than the arts that does that. I mean, science, which I think is a marvel. Science helps you try to imagine all the properties of the universe as each pattern is put into place. It's extraordinary. And nature, the relationship with nature, makes you marvel at the creation of the planet in the first place, the creation of the universe in the first place. But the art seems singularly to be able to help you identify what is a human being, and therefore what is another human being. Training in the arts, of course, has many, many technical aspects. And as I went on to be a theatre director, I learned those technical aspects, writing and sound and stage choreography, and many, many things. But the root of arts is something to do with how do I know I'm a human? And how do I tell you I'm a human? And how are you going to tell me you're a human, and what kind of human are you? So I've been given those opportunities as a child from a modest background to explore my inner life and understand that all around me the world is more than fact. It's got this mystery beyond fact. How have I taken what I was given and put it back into society? Well, I have tried to argue forever, really, ever since I was a professional, which is a long time ago now, when I was 21. I have tried to always push at the barriers that prevent everybody feeling that art can be part of their lives. I've tried to push at the barriers of education that tell you that what we ought to do is first teach everybody formal skills, reading, writing, arithmetic, for example, that's sort of the phrase around this child, and say no to galvanise, to motivate, to be a catalyst for each individual personality. People have to have their inner life equipped. They can then find the motivation for many of the factual things in education. So I have been arguing against a culture which often says the arts is a luxury we can add in later. And in sort of the formal idea of arts as a provision in society, I have constantly argued against the idea that those people who are properly educated are entitled to go to the opera, or go to classical music, or go to the art galleries, and everybody else can sort of wait in line until they're escalated up to a level of education where they then can sort of go through these portals. This is all nonsense. This is all basically putting barriers in the way of a fundamental human right. So I've often found myself in quite antagonistic is probably too strong a word, but certainly I found myself constantly critiquing the way the arts suggests hierarchy. I think that societies organise their institutions to explain what it is they want you to know about their society. And you can tell what a society wants its future to look like by how it organises its education system. So if a society wants its future to look like a very small number of leaders that are at the top, and a great many people who are following the leader, it will organise an education system that makes people feel that that's natural. And all its institutions will follow. So the banks will only allow lending for people who already have money, and the art galleries will only allow you in if you look like you're cultured. I mean, they won't might stop you, but you won't feel welcome. The schools will make sure that they are organised into those people who have privilege can have more privilege, and people who have no privilege should be grateful for what they got. You know, this is how societies organise a sense of knowing one's place. But radical thinkers like yourselves, looking at what a better world would really be like, would want to deconstruct those institutions and say it is not acceptable to revere institutions that wish to reinforce the idea that there are some people who are entitled and others who are not. So there's a paradox, isn't there? We have institutions that are the establishment of our societies, and many of them reinforce the idea that a rich, open, inclusive society is not actually what we want, even though we say it is. So in the arts, I believe it is fundamental as a human right. I think it's essential for a human being, but I think we still have a long way to go before we're giving off the signals that say that is actually what we believe in. Let me tell you why I think that the arts as a fundamental right is not something which is a luxury. Now, I just came back from Somaliland, where we were doing a WOW, a Women of the World in Hargeisa, which is another interesting story in itself. And these are the caves, the LG's caves. Have anybody been to Somaliland? Yeah? Your mum's from there? Has she been to the caves, do you know? Have you spoken about it? Anybody been to the caves? Have you been to the caves?
No, we didn't.
Haven't been? Okay. 5,000 years ago, people were painting these. And you see them? That's cows. Amazing, aren't they? 5,000 years ago. And in a minute you're going to see, can you see them all the pictures? Now there's me. You see that? That little picture there? No, that is me. You see it's quite small, and she's jumping up and down. She's jumping up and down. She's obviously listening to music, happy. She looks happy, doesn't she? And you'd agree it's a she, wouldn't you? Yes. Yeah. And that's my cow. Now I show you that because we don't really know what society 5,000 years ago was doing. But clearly they were painting. They were mixing dyes. They were painting, and those weren't instructions. They weren't sort of saying, by the way, not the road to the left. They were curious about the world, and they were already playful about the world, and they were summoning up images. And they were giving people individuality. So there you have art at the very, very start of society as a natural activity. So anybody who tells you, well, societies have to learn, do all the basics first, this isn't true. Societies obviously have right from the beginning felt that art making was one of the ways that they wanted to explain who they were and what the world was about. And not just descriptively, not just a factual thing, but something about imagination. And the reason why I've shown you this little picture of me here is because I think, when I go to ancient ruins or anything from the past, I always feel that what is interesting is that we as humans want to know what their buildings looked like. We want to know like things to do with how they felt. And so art plays a critical part in our understanding of human history as well, right back 5,000 years ago. And in that society, well, let's imagine, you've seen the caves that they lived in. They would sit under here for shelter, like this. So that was their institution. In those institutions, they had paintings on the walls. And I think that societies that fear art, and there are some, you have to say, well, what are they fearing? And I would say what they're fearing is this idea of the inner life of the human. They're not fearing decoration, because most societies decorate, all societies decorate. But they're fearing this idea that if you let somebody have an inner life, you can't control them. And inner lives don't necessarily have simple values. They can have all kinds of complicated feelings. We do. And in my experience, societies that wish to have more followers than leaders want more people to be persuaded that they have simple desires. And only the top echelons can have complicated desires. But I don't see how you can have a creative society. I don't know how you can push for an imaginative, creative, progressive society unless you give everybody the tools to have an inner life, and everybody the tools to understand that once you've got an inner life, you have to have values, you have to have ethics, because otherwise your inner life will be too maverick. So there's an interesting combination between developing an inner life and developing values. You have to have these two things together, because they become personal values. They're not just what you've been told to think and what you've been told to believe from the outside. So, a society like the UK is very interesting at the moment, because it's trying to work out whether its institutions can more clearly reflect a society that we believe would be better. And again, this is why I think art can be helpful. I gave a talk last week in the City of London. By the way, you should know that the first woman ever to be the head of Lloyd's Stock Exchange has just been appointed, Ingrid Beale. First woman ever. She and I were talking together about what they call authentic leadership. It's a big phrase. You're all familiar with this phrase, authentic leadership. It's a phrase that's, fashionable moment. Being yourself. Bringing your whole self to work was what we were talking about. And she was saying that when she started out as a banker, trying to make her way in life, she felt that she had to really be as much like a man as possible. She had to provide attributes that looked masculine enough. Tough. I'm not saying all men are like this, but there was an idea of maleness like this. Tough, ruthless, decisive, so you could drink anybody under the table, she said, and she even took some of her clients to lap dancing clubs. And she said at a certain point, she thought, actually, this is not me, and this is horrible, I don't know why I'm doing this. So she went away, left banking, and only when she discovered a woman in the BBC in Australia who was a senior leader, who actually was a completely different kind of leader, a leader who was obviously happy with being a woman, bringing her own womanness to leadership. Only then did she come back and reconstruct herself and become authentic. And she said part of the issue for her as a woman was whether or not she was allowed to show emotion. She'd been encouraged to believe that proper leadership, proper authority didn't include emotion. Somehow it was about factualness and objectivity. But as I said at the beginning, there's no such thing as an objective human. That's an illusion. That's a complete lie. So she started to operate from the idea that her whole self meant her emotional self. And she talked about the fact that discovering who her emotional self was not just about how she interacted with her friends and family, but how she felt when she looked at the sea, how she felt when she looked at the painting, how she felt when she looked into music. In other words, trying to unlock who the she was that was this emotional being. But her leadership ability has changed enormously because she's been in touch with this inner self, this inner life, and she's used art as a way of doing it. So when I said to her, well, would the city then suggest that most of its would-be employees should have an arts story from their background? She said, I would now believe that, but she said, we were always taught before, really, that art was an indulgence. It was a sort of a luxury, and that artists were impractical and dreamy, and not the stuff that professionalism is made of. And she said, I didn't understand. I thought that art was something that, because it was hard to explain, you couldn't really give it value. She said, now I understand that because it's hard to explain, that is why it is of such value. So I think that there is a way that society is beginning to see art differently than they did when I was a little girl. But it's a long journey, a long way to travel. Now, I want to ask you something. When you saw those pictures, now you know that they were painted by Somalilanders. So you already know that 5,000 years ago, people all over the world were doing the same thing. And yet we're told, generally, that Western art is superior to the my clicker now. It's not mission critical, this. Yes, there we go. So we're told, aren't we? We're sort of given the impression that there's a hierarchy in the world of intellectualism, and that the West's got it, which I can absolutely tell you, having just come back from China. In terms of history, that's not the case. And having when I went to Fez, where they had the first university before Oxford and Cambridge, and Timbuktu at the first library, I can tell you, there was no evidence for the fact that one part of the world owns intellectual knowledge or anything else for that matter. But power bases change things. And this is why art is such a fantastic leveler. Because it tells you that no, everybody's the same actually. Everybody has the need to make work, and everybody has the capability in the circumstances allow. So one of the things I want to ask you is, when you see this, who do you think painted it? Tell me who painted it. A Somalilander, yeah. And what kind of Somalilander? Could be a woman. Now, I met this chap, who is the curator of the place. You see him here, this chap here. And I knew I was being prompted. And I said, oh, this is wonderful. I said, I expect the women painted this, didn't they? He said, absolutely not. The women could not have painted these. So I said, why? He said, women don't do those things. And I said, they do. And he said, well, they didn't. And he was absolutely, he was offended actually. And I mean, he was a nice man, I probably shouldn't have been wanted. But I just thought it's amazing, isn't it? Most people will look at cave paintings and they will assume that men painted them. But if you think about it logically, actually, if it really was, people going off and cutting the cows, whatever they're going to eat, why wouldn't it be the women mixing the guys and doing the painting? It could have been men, it could have been either. But the point I'm making is that it is always assumed when you talk about the very first act of creativity, it is always assumed that that act will be a man, even though you didn't assume it. But you're in the minority, because many times when I've spoken about the property of creativity, women have had to put themselves into a mindset of going, that could be me, couldn't it? Because, again, growing up as a child, I remember, because obviously I come from a Christian background, there's that famous picture of Michelangelo where God hands down from his finger the electric spark of creativity to Adam, and that's it. And then he gets made from a rib, and we go on from there. You will have your own traditions, some of you, but by and large, the notion, the theological idea of creativity is that it is given to a man. And you have to fight very, very hard with your own sense of self to ask whether you believe that if art is a natural part of human existence, is it as natural for women as it is for men? And even if society has prevented women from being artists by and large from a long history, does that mean that that women in the future should be held back from it? And it's the same idea as other issues to do with inclusion and diversity. Because when we use these words, cultural diversity, inclusion, etc., we're always using the word as if there's a fixed position and then other people are going to be included in this. And the fixed position, as you know, tends to be the dominant power. And it is largely in the West, white and male. And that's been a very satisfactory way of organising power and society. But it's not the full story in terms of inclusion. Art, as an activity in the human, gives them this inner life. But the history of art is confusing. So I want to make that distinction for you. The history of art doesn't really allow you to think that this is a girl, and that painting a girl and a girl painting it right from the very beginning as an act of what humans are doesn't really tell you that. And as you're studying great artists, whether it be Shakespeare or Tagore or whoever you're discovering, you will mainly be looking at art through the story of a man's experience, which is a wonderful thing to explore, but it isn't the only experience. And I had to struggle as a student of drama to go, when people tell me that Hamlet equals the meaning of human existence, do I agree with that? Because I'm not Hamlet, apparently I'm Ophelia. And I'm going to go mad and then drop myself in the water and drown. Or I'm Gertrude, and I'm going to be so flaky that I know to leave my first marriage, widowed from my first, and I'm off to find his brother. And he's not a great role model. So it isn't possible to simply say, I will create identification for myself, my own inner life, and attach it to all male stories. I think we know that's the case. So we have to act, very smartly in this global world to say, where are the images and the stories going to come from that reflect girls and women, that reflect proper global diversity? Where are the stories from other parts of the world? So that we don't end up with a canon of great art that starts from the idea of what Western art did and what Western male art did. Do you understand? So I'm making a massive distinction between, here we have the absolute urgent need for humans to say, this is what I'm like, and this is what I feel, and this is what the world looks like to me. Does it look like that to you? The essential need to make art. And then societies start saying, well, how do we make sure that we can organise ourselves, and who's going to be in control, and who's going to do what we need them to do? And that has ended up being patriarchy. And it's been very efficient. And I do love men, by the way, so I'm just want to put that in for you. But it has made sure that people are tiered in terms of their right to an inner life, to a full inner life. And then institutions have created that, and then carrying on that idea, the world has also organised itself into power bases and created a tension all the time, using art to talk about intellectual superiority. To the degree that when I was a girl, I was told that South Africa under apartheid Do you all know about South African apartheid? When South Africa divided whites and blacks and ethnics, I was basically told as a fact that that was because black people really were not fully human, and so it was okay, which was the justification of slavery as well. Fortunately, I went to ballet classes when I was 7 in the West Indian Centre that was run by the African community, who were not Windrush, they were the African sailors. And I begged to differ even then. But it's an example of how art itself gets trapped into the way society organises its power structures. And you can't always look to the artistic institutions to give you the truth of what art can offer. So while I speak about the absolutely critical need to allow all young people, and for all people, to study art to make it part of their lives, I at the same time want you to critique how art ends up in our societies and what it's used for. Because those two things can be a paradox, which is exactly the same as education. Education is a fundamental need in a human, but how education gets disseminated in societies depends so much on the way society wants to organise its power. So I want to end before questions with this point. Coming back from modern China, I was thinking about two things. I was thinking about the destruction that's going on at the moment of Palmyra and the whole idea of pulling down examples of archaeology, examples of buildings, examples of societies that you don't agree with. And thinking how fearful people are of debate, of conjecture, of difference. How fearful they are. And how the only way to have progressive, inclusive, peaceful societies is to enjoy difference and to be happy with difference and to want other people to have freedom because you have freedom in yourself. And modern China is really struggling with that. And it's perfect to say that's China here at the moment, but they really, really struggle with the idea that individual freedom is something which would make a society better. And they're not the only ones struggling with that. But we also have this idea as a residue in our heads, which is that, are we educating too many people to be leaders? We can't all be leaders. So are we educating the followers? That was a phrase that a British person said to me. It wasn't a Chinese person or anybody else. A British person. Are we educating the followers? And I took that as a different version of saying, who'll empty the bins? Surely everybody's potential must be about leadership. Because at some point, you're going to be a parent or a carer, and that's leadership. At some point, you might be asked in your class to bully somebody, and you might say, I won't, and that's leadership. At some point, you might be asked to stand up for somebody else's situation as a grown-up, and that's leadership. There's so many ways that leadership organises itself separate from whether or not you have a top job. Nobody should be educating followers. Everybody should be educating leaders. And everybody should be recognising that leadership is something that goes into this idea of your inner life and the values in your inner life. You've got an exemplary school, so you can think about that model when you're running the world. But the thing is that I would want to ask you to go forward, even if you are scientists, or doctors, or accountants, whatever you are going to go on to be, or whether you choose to lead a domestic life or be a landscape gardener, whatever it is you're going to do, think about this idea of permission to give people their inner life. Think about that little girl, and is she entitled to enjoy music and dancing, and poetry and sculpture? And whether she wants to end up painting the caves herself, like I do, or whether she just wants to be receiving the joy in it. Is she entitled? Will you give her that right? And will you fight for art to be part of everybody's rights and not just the privileged few. I hope you will. Thank you. I've got some time for questions, if you like. Or you can just stand up and make a speech of yourself, your own. So, anybody would like to ask anything? Yes. The microphone coming your way.
There have been lots of cuts to government funding for local art services around the UK this year. For example, local authorities across the country have had to close libraries and small theatres and cut music services. What effect do you think these cuts have on local communities?
Great question. Well, first of all, the effect they have on local communities is to make local communities think that they don't matter that much. Because the landscape of the UK is sorted out into places that are more important than others, and it's reinforced then by cuts which take away rights. And if you think about the local authority cutting the library completely, because it's had to make a choice between that and healthcare centre or day centre or whatever, that's not a choice that other communities have had to make. So I think the first thing is it undermines the confidence of the community. It isn't just the loss of the provision, it's the fact that, in a sense, they're powerless to stop it, and nobody else is doing anything about it. And I think that that issue of do you cut a day centre or do you cut a library, obviously you want to cut neither, but I think that sometimes counterintuitively keeping the arts and education provisions going helps build a society's confidence, and they will then be more entrepreneurial. I mean, it's a much bigger story to talk about really, but I think we have to make our communities, places Oldham, Bolton, Sunderland. I mean, Sunderland's just lost a huge number of jobs. I'm giving a big speech there shortly. And, Sunderland has got to find its ingenuity to build itself back up again. And it has to do that through its arts and, and education system.
I'm sorry, but this is not a question, it's a statement. And at my time in Mulberry, I just participated in the arts. And, for example, I was part of the Edinburgh Fringe Festival, and I was in a drama production called The Dublin Theory. And I just wanted to give an example of how the arts have played a role in my life, because by participating in the drama production, it's kind of set me up for life, because without doing the domino effect, I wouldn't have the confidence I have to speak right now in a room full of people. And I feel like this confidence would just build throughout my time, and it has enabled me to put myself in processes like a trip to go to America, which I've been successful in. So I feel like just having the confidence and just getting involved in the arts will not only just help you through if you just want to have a career in the arts, but in other careers.
I couldn't agree with you more. It isn't really about training people to become actresses or writers or whatever, although that should be true for any of you if you want to do that. But no, it's something about confidence, you said. And we need people who are confident, not people who are certain. Certainty is a bit of a problem in people. Confidence is a great thing, because if you're confident to be wrong as well as right, and you're confident to have doubts. The confidence to have doubts is what you want, and the confidence to be vulnerable. And well, you said it all. So that's what anybody could say, especially to me. I think I'm going to speak. Who else would like to say something? I just see anybody at the back first of all. Okay. People here, yeah. Somebody over there. There. Yes.
How can I, as an individual of society, fight for the arts? And I have another question as well, and is Your career has been really long, and how did you see society, like, people accepting, girls and, their power through, and they're expressing themselves throughout? Do you think our society is still learning about how to accept girls in society?
Yes, I think the society is still learning how to accept girls in society generally, and still learning how to believe this idea that girls and women are innately creative in a way that, because people often say, well, women can have babies, as if, well, of course that's biologically true, but as if that somehow is their creativity. Whereas one might say, yes, we can have babies, but that doesn't mean it stands in place of being able to be an artist. So, how do you fight for it? Well, at any opportunity, you just speak up about it. If you go vote for politicians who believe in the arts, and write to politicians regularly and say, what information is? Are you Town Hamlets, aren't you? So, who's your local MP? Oh, he's pretty good actually, isn't he? He does really believe in the arts. But just, we'll keep patting him back and telling him not to forget to about the arts. But I've been doing this, when I went to university to do drama, I wanted to be a director. I've known I wanted to be a director when I was 12. And I don't know how I knew, but I did know. And this is another thing, that sometimes you have these feelings, you've got to believe in yourself. And the people who were training at university didn't want me to be a director. They said there's no women directors. And then they named three, and said, well, one's dead, one's gay, and one's killed himself recently. What do you want to do? Of those three. And and it was very negative. But it made me think, right, well, I will definitely go on there despite you, because I realised that this pushback on girls, that must have happened when people were trying to get them to vote. It's obviously happened when trying to get girls' education. So I am the result of one of other men and women fighting for my rights at a previous point in time. So I feel that we've all got to fight for the next generation's rights. And you can only really fight for these rights by doing it yourself. And you just have to keep pushing. I mean, my parents were lovely, but they were kind of, what? You're going to do drama? But you've got this education. Why aren't you going to be a doctor? And they didn't put me under too much pressure, but I know a lot of people who, particularly girls, who weren't really allowed to do the arts because they had to sort of either settle down or go to university and do something orthodox. And all I can say is that if you really, really want to do the arts, you just have to defy those feelings on people, because it is your life. So the financial advantage of investing in the arts is that if you think of the arts as a continuum from investment through to commercial output, as opposed to just, the subsidised bit of the arts, then it's a fantastic value for money and gives the UK an amazing reputational edge. You'd have to say that London is the most creative city in the world. It's viewed to be that, and that's why we have an amazing tourist industry, that's why we have so many people wanting to work here and so on. So I think the government is actually beginning to realise that investment in the arts is a big thing. The worry I have, and it goes back to your point actually, about cuts in other places, they do see that London needs to be propelled forward and invested in terms of culture. They do now see that this thing called the Northern Powerhouse, which is basically Manchester and around, could have the same kind of accelerator going. But they're not going to do that in Dorset or Oldham or who's from Somerset here? Yes. So, I mean, I don't know what your artistic provision is like in Somerset.
Well, we dance quite a lot. We do have an art music.
And what about, which town do you live in?
Mulberry.
Does it have anything there?
There's some
Amateur dramatics. Who live in Castle? Somerset people there?
How does it work?
Got a gallery.
Yeah, it's a route along an art gallery. Yeah,
So not as much as
But not, it's not, yeah, it's not amazing how.
no. So the thing is that you can persuade government to get involved in subsidising the arts when it can clearly see an economic and development advantage. The issue, I think, is trying to get governments to believe in investing in the best possible life for their citizens, and the idea that the arts will help the citizens actually become really rich, creative individuals. And that's that. I mean, I think it isn't just scepticism about that in politicians. I think it's also, for a lot of people, a sense of, well, do we need to give people all these things? I think there's a sort of mean-spiritedness sometimes about the way humans who've got power look at other humans who haven't got it and go, well, they don't need that much, do they? As long as they've got a job, and, you know, in a sort of in a park. But we, you have to keep sort of pursuing this and change people's minds bit by bit. And I think we are. It's much better than it was 25 years ago. Politicians are much less embarrassed about the arts in the UK. Because in America, it's terrible. America doesn't even have a whole subsidised system. So it's fine if you're living in Chicago or Washington or New York, but you try living in the outer edges of Wyoming and look how much arts you get, and you'll see it reflected back in the way that the country as a whole thinks and talks.
Hello. Do you think that capitalism plays a vital role in preventing one from accessing the inner self?
Well, I'm not going to ask you to define capitalism, but I do want to just talk about that phrase for a minute. Do you think, well, let me put a question back to you. Do you think we live in Britain in a capitalist economy?
Not fully.
Not fully, we don't fully. We live in a mixed economy, which I like. I mean, I like a mixed economy. I don't believe in a society that is completely state-run. I think that would be, well, there's no evidence that we've done as much humans as it could do. And I don't believe in a fully market economy either. So I like a mixed economy. Obviously, many people who have made their money out of maximising profit, at a certain point, have taken the profit and put it back into ways of giving people their inner life. So it's very interesting that things like the Getty Foundation and the Rockefeller Foundation, etc., a lot of those foundations made from capitalists actually recognise at a certain point that supporting people's better life is part of what they ought to be doing. But I think there's a time gap very often. So I think when a company is set on making the bottom line work, they're often reducing people's inner life as much as possible in order to basically to kind of move them forward, almost like products. And I think that it isn't true that capitalism can't contain philosophical value, any more than it's true that the state believes better in people. Am I making sense? So I think that this is a question of, what kind of capitalism? Are we talking about the values of a society and how it uses its capitalist assets? And that's why I think that it really irritates me when people just talk about capitalism. I'm not, you didn't irritate me, but it's as if, it's so much more complex than that. The most important thing we can do as a whole society together is speak about what we believe is right for humans and how the society can best demonstrate that. And people who have power, including people who run businesses, need to be part of that ethical debate, and they need to take their place as responsible people. It shouldn't be public servants believe in human values and people who make money don't have to bother about it. That's not right. So I think that we need to call to account our money-making side of our world and ask them to get more involved in human values. Yes, no,
Last question.
Oh, last question. Okay, well, all Jude. Yep. Microphone?
So, in the United Kingdom, recently there's been like the emergence of like liberal arts degrees at universities, and there's lots of foundations, for example, like the School of Life, and kind of promote kind of mixed field kind of arts education. And there's this whole idea that, which I think is a very good idea, that you can't be a dancer without being a musician, you can't be a musician without being a dancer, kind of this mixture of arts. And so I just wanted to ask you what you think a full arts and education encompasses, and whether or not we can like supply this interdisciplinary arts education to all people everywhere.
Again, you're all asking fantastic questions. Well, first of all, we are very short now in this country of interdisciplinary training. For those of you who are really interested in researching this, you should look up the history of something called the Black Mountain College that came about in California in the 40s. What happened was a lot of the tremendously interesting German artists fleeing from the rise of National Socialism and Hitler left Germany, and they managed to get out, and led by a chap called Walter Gropius, and they formed a colony of teachers and artists in Black Mountain in California. And it was an incredibly innovative arts education college that did dance, music, all of these things as combined. And out of that college came people like Nurse Cunningham, who was one of the great new modern dancers, also Rauschenberg, John Cage. I don't know if you know of these people, but they're very, very avant-garde modern artists. And that college, which didn't last very long, but it was very, very influential, influenced another college which we founded in this country called Dartington. Has anybody heard of Dartington College? Few, yes. So Dartington College also took this idea that if you're going to be a choreographer, you have to understand music. That's obvious though, isn't it? But you also have to understand sculpture, because you need to understand form in space. And this fully rounded education in arts was what they offered. We don't have Dartington anymore. We don't have Black Mountain College. And I think that we are still grappling with this complete education that you're talking about, which also should include philosophy and probably maths. I think we'll see the return of it because we are more comfortable now, again, with reaching out for something, the holistic knowledge. And until we do that, we are left with what I think is much less helpful, which is the silo of, I'm a dancer, I'm a visual artist, I'm a musician, and they don't even talk to each other. I run the Southbank Centre, so I know. Because we do all those things here, you can tell they're all different tribes. They rarely discuss anything with each other. And they don't necessarily know how to expand their knowledge by reaching out. So I don't know whether you might like to invent this college again, personally, but it's definitely there and it's needed. I'm interested in when you have something like the Royal Society of the Arts, or the liberal arts, those were often combined assets of ideas, and I think that's a much more natural activity. And since we're ending on this question, I end by kind of go back to the caves image. Say, well, what would they be doing? They'd be sitting around, be singing, they'd be lighting the fire, they'd be eating, they'd be doing whatever version of worship, they'd be dancing, probably, with painting going on, obviously. And I mean, the whole society lived in one place, doing everything together. And I think that in a way humans long for that. They don't really want all this separation, specialism. It's there and it's needed, but you have to also find ways of gathering back together again. So the more that the arts can think of themselves as one group that includes philosophy, the better. So there's a lot to be done, isn't there? So thank you very much indeed for being such a lovely and inquisitive audience. And I'll pass back to my team over here.
Thank you very much, Jude, for a brilliant start and your education lecture. As an art school, it is really inspiring mean the arts in Britain today.
Your words remind us of how much the arts enrich our own education and the education of students all over the country. We are really thankful to you for sharing such an important message with us. Please accept a piece of artwork from Mulberry as a thank you on behalf of all of us.
We'd like to thank all of you for joining us tonight, and we hope that you are enjoying your evening.
We will now hand you over to our head teacher, Dr. Vanessa.
Well, thank you very much, and thank you, Jude, for being, as always, so inspiring. It was an absolutely fantastic lecture, and as our first inaugural annual lecture, we're incredibly honoured to have you make that today. So I just want to say a few things now, really, in celebration of you, actually, Jude. First of all, thank you all very much for coming tonight to this first annual lecture. Thank you, governors, and there are many governors here, parent governors especially. I'd like to thank you for supporting this event. A long time ago, I sat in this hall listening to a lecture by Sir Jim Rose on the curriculum, and I looked up at these great murals, these works of art that are around us now. And I was probably sitting somewhere there, actually. And I wondered if I would ever find myself here again, because this is a celebrated institution of learning and of liberal thought and of innovation and creativity, but it is still quite exclusive. And so, because of that, actually, I think we all thought that it would be great for Mulberry to take it over for this night. And of course, as much as anywhere else in London, anywhere else in the world, this is a Mulberry Girls' place, as is every other place of great celebration. So it is actually a great honour to be here this evening, both to be here again with you, Jude, and with Mulberry Girls and staff and friends to listen to you speaking, because you've been such a loyal friend to Mulberry. As all great women do, Jude has extended her hand to younger women, in this case, my girls, and helped them up beside her, sharing platforms with them and giving them every opportunity to be proud of their achievements. And I am enormously grateful for this. You are so generous with your time and with the spaces that you have. Now, when I was trying to think what to say about you, Jude, in celebration, and when I was thinking about you, I was reminded of a poem which I have often read to students early in my time as head teacher at Mulberry. And it's about the artistic inner life of working class women in Italy and their beauty and their strength and their courage. Now, Jude, you champion the arts for everyone, for all people. The Southbank Centre has noticeably changed as a public space since you became director. I have known it since I was a girl, as a very young girl, and I've seen it change. And it is amazing now to be part of such a vibrant public space where anyone can come, anyone can be artistic. And you often see young people in particular using that space so creatively, dancing downstairs. Anyone can have that space to express themselves. So the poem that I'm going to read you actually could have been written about you. It symbolises much of the work that you fight for, and it has been intrinsic to our understanding of the arts at Mulberry. And I couldn't think of any other better way. I would have loved to have written a poem myself, but this woman who wrote this poem between 1870 and 1975, an Italian called Ada Negri, I think she sums you up. And she says, "Make way. Make way from the noisy ceilings of workshops, from shiny ploughs and hellish fires of horrid forges, from caverns where a people weaves, hammers, creates from mines, I rise, and, free plebeian woman, raise a hymn to work. Make way from woods filled with nests and whispers, from myrtle bushes and fresh hiding places, from fertile soil, from blue waters where the gentle halcyon circles, I rise, girdled with flowers, and, bold peasant woman, raise a paean to the earth. Who blocks the unleashed course of the stream? Who halts the flight of the lark through rosy skies? Who stops the shot arrow? I am the crashing stream, the sparkling arrow, the melodious bird, now a wandering swallow, now a bird of paradise. Art, it is for you I fight. Future, I await you. This full blooming emotion, a waxing flame kindling my mind and heart, I toss to the earth and sky in the bejewelled garb of a flying strophe, a splendid sheaf of thunderbolts and flowers. And so I would like you all please to stand and join me in celebrating Jude Kelly this evening. And of course I'd like to thank all the girls here at Mulberry. You are absolutely wonderful. We have a fantastic role model who we've heard from tonight. But I know that all of you will go out and take those words wisely and use them wisely, and use this moment actually as a means to inspire yourselves to go on and create your own great creative work. Thank you, Ansel, for coming to join us tonight. It's been an absolute pleasure having you. And I'd like you now all to be invited to a drink and canapes downstairs.